We begin the new Psycho-Cybernetics with this introduction by Dan S. Kennedy. The year 2000 was the 40th anniversary of the publication of Dr. Maltz's original Psycho-Cybernetics. The book has sold over 30 million copies in all of its different editions worldwide, inspired a number of audio cassette programs for individuals, as well as complete training programs created for corporations, sales organizations, even sports teams. In the 2000 Olympics, for example, the coach of the U.S. equestrian team used Psycho-Cybernetics techniques, as she has with other teams for many years. In many ways, Psycho-Cybernetics is the original science of self-improvement. I make that statement for three principal reasons. First, Dr. Maltz was the first researcher and author to understand and explain how the self-image, a term he popularized for certain processes within the subconscious mind, has complete control over an individual's ability to achieve, or fail to achieve, any goal. Second, everything written, said, recorded, or taught about self-improvement since Maltz wrote has derived from his work. Try and find any book on success or self-improvement written since 1960, right through to yesterday, that does not include a discussion of self-image and the techniques for improving and managing it, notably including visualization, mental rehearsal, and relaxation, and you'll realize how crucial the work of Maltz still is. The relatively young science of sports psychology, relied on heavily by professional golfers, sports franchises, coaches, and Olympians, owes an enormous debt, occasionally acknowledged, to Psycho-Cybernetics. Third, unlike philosophical musings about success, Psycho-Cybernetics is, in fact, scientific. It provides practical things to do, not just think about, that yield quantifiable results. What is unique about Psycho-Cybernetics is that it offers techniques that help make whatever was once difficult easy. In short, whether you set out to lose weight and keep it off, lower your golf score, double your income in selling, become a confident public speaker, write the great American novel, or achieve any other imaginable goal, in order to succeed, you will use Psycho-Cybernetics techniques, either directly from Dr. Maltz or some other source influenced by his work. By acquiring this program, you have gone to the first and still foremost source. It is significant that, with very little publicity or marketing, the original Psycho-Cybernetics book has had such amazing longevity and is now a classic in its field. Today, just as 10, 20, and 30 years ago, sales managers tell recruits, coaches tell athletes, consultants tell clients, get and read this book. Now I dare to update the classic. In doing so, I have set out to preserve much of the original content. Much of it, in fact, is unchanged. Some has been modestly updated in language or example. To integrate it with other works of Dr. Maltz, I have added my own observations and lessons learned from teaching Psycho-Cybernetics techniques, along with examples and stories submitted by many users of these techniques and culled from others' books referencing these techniques. Throughout, I have tried to maintain Maltz's original voice. Over the years since 1960, Dr. Maltz and those who followed him devoted increasing emphasis to translating the principles and concepts of Psycho-Cybernetics into actual, practical mental training exercises, and I've included a number of those as well. All things combined, this is the most complete Psycho-Cybernetics work ever published. Understanding the two general types of servomechanisms. Servomechanisms are divided into two general types. One, where the target, goal, or answer is known and the objective is to reach it or accomplish it. Two, where the target or answer is not known and the objective is to discover or locate it. The human brain and nervous system operate in both ways. An example of the first type is the self-guided torpedo or the interceptor missile. The target or goal is known, an enemy ship or plane. The objective is to reach it. Such machines must know the target they are shooting for. They must have some sort of propulsion system that propels them forward in the general direction of the target. They must be equipped with sense organs, radar, sonar, heat perceptors, etc., which bring information from the target. These sense organs keep the machine informed when it is on the correct course, positive feedback, and when it commits an error and gets off course, negative feedback. The machine does not react or respond to positive feedback. It is doing the correct thing already, and just keeps on doing what it is doing. There must be a corrective device, however, that responds to negative feedback. When negative feedback informs the mechanism that it is off the beam, for example, too far to the right, the corrective mechanism automatically causes the rudder to move so that it will steer the machine back to the left. If it overcorrects and heads too far to the left, this mistake is made known through negative feedback, and the corrective device moves the rudder so it steers the machine back to the right. The torpedo accomplishes its goal by going forward, making errors, and continually correcting them. By a series of zigzags, it literally gropes its way to the goal. Dr. Norbert Wiener, who pioneered the development of goal-seeking mechanisms in World War II, believes that something very similar to the foregoing happens in the human nervous system whenever you perform any purposeful activity, even in such a simple goal-seeking situation as picking up a pencil from a table. We are able to accomplish the goal of picking up the pencil because of an automatic mechanism, not by will or conscious thinking alone. All that the conscious thought does is to select the goal, trigger it into action by desire, and feed information to the automatic mechanism so that your hand continually corrects its course. In the first place, said Dr. Wiener, only an anatomist would know all the muscles involved in picking up the pencil, and if you knew, you would not consciously say to yourself, I must contract my shoulder muscles to elevate my arm. Now I must contract my triceps to extend my arm, etc. You just go ahead and pick up the pencil, and are not conscious of issuing orders to individual muscles, nor of computing just how much contraction is needed. When you select the goal and trigger it into action, an automatic mechanism takes over. First of all, you have picked up a pencil or performed similar movements before. Your automatic mechanism has learned something of the correct response needed. Next, your automatic mechanism uses feedback data furnished to the brain by your eyes, which tell it the degree to which the pencil is not picked up. This feedback data enables the automatic mechanism to continually correct the motion of your hand until it is steered to the pencil. Picking up a pencil probably isn't very exciting, but it should be, because the little process just described that we use to pick up a pencil or perform any number of other routine, unchallenging tasks is exactly the same process we can use to achieve much more complex and seemingly challenging goals. What's exciting is that you own the process and use it constantly. No new goal-achieving capabilities are needed, and none are lacking. In other words, if you can pick up a pencil, you can speak confidently and persuasively to large audiences, or write compelling advertising, or start a business, or play golf, or you name it. You already own the process. In a baby, just learning to use its muscles, the correction of the hand in reaching for a rattle is very obvious. The baby has little stored information to draw upon. Its hand zigzags back and forth and gropes obviously as it reaches. As learning takes place, correction becomes more and more refined. We see this in a person just learning to drive a car, who overcorrects and zigzags back and forth across the street. Once, however, a correct or successful response has been accomplished, it is remembered for future use. The automatic mechanism then duplicates this successful response on future trials. It has learned how to respond successfully. It remembers its successes, forgets its failures, and repeats the successful action as a habit. This is why the most adept, successful achievers in different fields appear to be succeeding so effortlessly. Top-performing sales professionals respond to prospects' objections or concerns without missing a beat, say just the right thing at just the right time. Their responses have become habits, instinctive in a way. You already have reached this point with any number of things you do well. This fact that you have done so guarantees that you can do so again for any other purpose you choose. How your brain finds answers to problems. Let's return to our examination of the process. Now let us suppose that the room is dark, so that you cannot see the pencil. You know or hope there's a pencil on the table, along with a variety of other objects. Instinctively, your hand begins to grope back and forth, performing zigzag motions, or scanning, rejecting one object after another until the pencil is found and recognized. This is an example of the second type of servo mechanism. Recalling a name temporarily forgotten is another example. A scanner in your brain roams through your stored memories until the correct name is recognized. An electronic brain solves problems in much the same way. First, a great deal of data must be fed into the machine. This stored or recorded information is the machine's memory. A problem is posed to the machine. It scans back through its memory until it locates the only answer that is consistent with and meets all the conditions of the problem. problem and answer together constitute a whole situation or structure. When part of the situation or structure, the problem, is given to the machine, it locates the only missing parts, or the right size brick, so to speak, to complete the structure. You are familiar with this in search engines on the internet and search functions within computer software. The earliest versions of these in computers were relatively slow, awkward, and inefficient. Today's versions are lightning fast by comparison, but still very limited in scope and power if compared to the equivalent search engine included in your own mind. People who become very committed practitioners of psycho-cybernetics get very, very good at using their internal search engines. Many writers and speakers, for example, tell me of giving their subconscious instructions about their need for a good anecdote, story, joke, or forgotten details of a story for a writing task or speech, then taking a nap, to awake with exactly the material they wanted on their minds. The final word on imagination practice. It doesn't matter what religious, spiritual, or philosophical background or viewpoint you come from. It doesn't matter how you describe it. Imagination practice, visualization, mental picturing, or using my terminology, theater of your mind. What's important is that you do it. If you will choose a target to apply this to and give it a solid, honest 21-day trial, you will be so gratified with the results that you will certainly choose to continue using this tool for the rest of your life, and benefit enormously by doing so, just as countless athletes, entertainers, doctors, lawyers, business leaders, and others have before you. Here are a few exercises to get you started. Try this mental training exercise. Your present self-image was built on your own imagination pictures of yourself in the past, which grew out of interpretations and evaluations you placed on experience. Now you are to use the same method to build an adequate self-image that you previously used to build an inadequate one. Set aside a period of 30 minutes each day where you can be alone and undisturbed. Relax and make yourself as comfortable as possible. Now, close your eyes and exercise your imagination. Many people find they get better results if they imagine themselves sitting before a large motion picture screen and imagine that they are seeing a motion picture of themselves. The important thing is to make these pictures as vivid and as detailed as possible. You want your mental pictures to approximate actual experience as much as possible. The way to do this is to pay attention to small details, sights, sounds, objects in your imagined environment. Details of the imagined environment are all important in this exercise because for all practical purposes, you are creating a practice experience. And if the imagination is vivid enough and detailed enough, your imagination practice is equivalent to an actual experience, insofar as your nervous system is concerned. The next important thing to remember is that during these 30 minutes you see yourself acting and reacting appropriately, successfully, ideally. It doesn't matter how you acted yesterday. You do not need to try to have faith you will act in the ideal way tomorrow. Your nervous system will take care of that in time, if you continue to practice. See yourself acting, feeling, being as you want to be. Do not say to yourself, I'm going to act this way tomorrow. Just say to yourself, I'm going to imagine myself acting this way now, for 30 minutes, today. Imagine how you would feel if you were already the sort of personality you want to be. If you've been shy and timid, see yourself moving among people with ease and poise, and feeling good because of it. If you've been fearful and anxious in certain situations, see yourself acting calmly and deliberately, acting with confidence and courage, and feeling expansive and confident, because you are. This exercise builds new memories, or stored data in your midbrain and central nervous system. It builds a new image of self. After practicing it for a time, you will be surprised to find yourself acting differently, more or less automatically and spontaneously without trying. This is as it should be. You do not need to take thought or try or make an effort now in order to feel ineffective and act inadequately. Your present inadequate feeling and doing are automatic and spontaneous because of the memories, real and imagined, you have built into your automatic mechanism. You will find it will work just as automatically upon positive thoughts and experiences as upon negative ones. Step 1. Take pad and pen and write out a brief outline or description of the mental movie you intend to construct, experiment with, develop, and view in the theater in the mind. Step 2. Set aside 30 minutes a day, preferably at the same time each day, to find a quiet, private place, relax, close your eyes, enter your theater, and begin playing, editing, replaying your movie. Step 3. Gradually massage your movie so that its star, you, performs exactly as you desire and achieves the experience and results you desire. Strive to arrive at this point within the first 10 days. Step 4. For the remaining 11 days, play and enjoy that movie repeatedly, without change. Don't be too careful. The example I used early in this program had Dr. Viner showing us that a man cannot even perform such a simple operation as picking up a pencil from a table by conscious thought or will. When a person depends almost entirely upon conscious thought and willpower, he becomes too careful, too anxious, and too fearful of results. And the advice of Jesus to take no thought for the morrow, or of St. Paul to be careful in nothing, is regarded as impractical nonsense. Yet this is precisely the advice that William James, Dean of American Psychologists, gave us years ago, if we would but have listened to him. In his little essay, The Gospel of Relaxation, he said that modern man was too tense, too concerned for results, too anxious. This was in 1899, and that there was a better and easier way. Quote, "When once a decision is reached, and execution is the order of the day, dismiss absolutely all responsibility and care about the outcome. Unclamp, in a word, your intellectual and practical machinery and let it run free, and the service it will do you will be twice as good." Unquote. Incidentally, this is different from simple intuition. I am well aware that a great many people rebel at the thought of entrusting important decisions and responsibilities to something as ethereal as intuition. What we are talking about, I remind you, is a practical formula beginning with conscious, rational thought, but then delegating, via the imagination in concert with the self-image, to an amazingly powerful search engine and servo mechanism that will work for you toward the resolution of any problem, entirely free of stress. The secret of creative thinking and creative doing. Proof of the fact that what we have been saying is true can be seen in the experience of writers, inventors, and other creative workers. Invariably, they tell us that creative ideas are not consciously thought out by conscious thinking, but come automatically, spontaneously, and somewhat like a bolt out of the blue when the conscious mind has let go of the problem and is engaged in thinking of something else. These creative ideas do not come willy-nilly without some preliminary conscious thought about the problem. All the evidence points to the conclusion that in order to receive an inspiration or a hunch, the person must first of all be intensely interested in solving a particular problem or securing an answer. He or she must think about it consciously, gather all the information available on the subject, consider all the possible courses of action. And above all, there must be a burning desire to solve the problem. But having defined the problem, having seen in the imagination the desired end result, having secured all the information and facts, then additional struggling, fretting, and worrying over it does not help, but seems to hinder the solution. In his classic best-selling book, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill tells of being put under pressure by his publisher to come up with an appropriate title for his book in just 24 hours. Such a title idea had been eluding Hill for months while he completed and submitted his manuscript. At D-Day, his editor told him he had only 24 hours to come up with a good idea, or the book would go to press with the editor's best idea, a title of Use Your Noodle to Get the Boodle. Hill protested the outrageous hype and tabloid nature of the title, saying it would ruin him, that he'd never be taken seriously. 24 hours, his publisher said. That is stress. Briefly, Hill tried to consciously create the title, but soon gave up, as he'd been trying for months with no success. He decided instead to turn the whole matter over to his subconscious and let whatever would be. Then he awoke from a nap with the title. On close examination, we can easily see that all his automatic success mechanism did was rewrite the bad title, Noodle is Think, Boodle is Rich. I believe every author has had this kind of experience. Some of us have gone out of our way to have it deliberately and repeatedly, often letting whole chapters or lectures be written for us by our servo mechanisms while we nap or play with our grandchildren or sit in a boat, fishpole in hand. The editor of this program, the president of the Psycho-Cybernetics Foundation, Dan Kennedy, has written 9 books and numerous articles, writes a monthly newsletter, creates dozens of audio cassette programs, and is a busy advertising copywriter as well. He has made a point of mastering the application of psycho-cybernetics for this purpose, so that he can go to sleep at night, then awake and instantly sit at his computer keyboard and pour out the writing work that has been done for him as he slept. While others tell of writing being enormously stressful and difficult, for him, it is virtually free of stress. Dan Kennedy says he was first inspired to attempt this by my writing about Bertrand Russell's experience in the original edition of this book. In The Conquest of Happiness, Bertrand Russell said, "I have found, for example, that if I have to write upon some rather difficult topic, the best plan is to think about it with very great intensity, the greatest intensity of which I am capable, for a few hours or days, and at the end of that time give orders, so to speak, that the work is to proceed underground." After some months, I return consciously to the topic and find that the work has been done. Before I had discovered this technique, I used to spend the intervening months worrying because I was making no progress. I arrived at the solution none the sooner for this worry, and the intervening months were wasted, whereas now I can devote them to other pursuits." Unquote. What works for writers can work for you. The delegation of creation, that is, problem solving, they are one and the same, to the servo mechanism, is a universally applicable process. Lennox Riley Lohr, once president of the National Broadcasting Company, wrote an article published in the March 1940 issue of American magazine titled, "Anyone Can Be an Idea Man." In it, he told how ideas that had helped him in business came to him. Quote, "Ideas, I find, come most readily when you are doing something that keeps the mind alert without putting too much strain upon it. Shaving, driving a car, sawing a plank, or fishing or hunting, for instance, or engaging with some friend in stimulating conversation. Some of my best ideas came from information picked up casually and entirely unrelated to my work." Unquote. C.G. Suits, once chief of research at General Electric, said that nearly all the discoveries in research laboratories came as hunches during a period of relaxation, following a period of intensive thinking and fact-gathering. In other words, when the stress of trying to force the answer through conscious thought is turned off, the servo mechanism is liberated to function as an automatic success mechanism, and often does just that. You are a creative worker. The mistake we make is assuming that this process of unconscious cerebration is reserved for authors, artists, inventors, and other so-called creative workers. We are all creative workers, whether we are cooks working in a kitchen, school teachers, students, sales professionals, or entrepreneurs. We all have the same success mechanism within us, and it will work in solving personal problems, running a business, or selling goods, just as it will in writing a story or inventing a product. Bertrand Russell recommended that the same method he used in his writing be employed by his readers in solving their mundane personal problems. Dr. J.B. Rhine of Duke University said that he was inclined to think that what we call genius is a process, a natural way in which the human mind works to solve any problem, but that we mistakenly apply the term genius only when the process is used to write a book or paint a picture. Michael J. Gelb's fascinating book, How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci, is based on the premise that genius is a process more so than genetic gift. In effect, each of us has genius within, in most cases waiting to be awakened, liberated, energized, and utilized. Right now, being a genius might not be part of your self-image, but soon I hope it will be, based on this expanded idea of what genius really is and how it works. Fact versus opinion. Many times we create confusion when we add our own opinion to facts and come up with the wrong conclusion. Fact: a husband cracks his knuckles. Opinion: the wife concludes, he does that because he thinks it will annoy me. Fact: the husband sucks his teeth after eating. Opinion: the wife concludes, if he had any regard for me, he would improve his manners. Fact: two friends are whispering when you walk up. Suddenly they stop talking and look somewhat embarrassed. Opinion: they must have been gossiping about me. The wife, if able to understand that her husband's annoying mannerisms were not deliberate and willful acts on his part for the purpose of annoying her, if able to stop reacting as if she had been personally insulted, is able to pause, analyze the situation, and select an appropriate, even productive response. Be willing to see the truth. Often we color incoming sensory data by our own fears, anxieties, or desires. But to deal effectively with environment, we must be willing to acknowledge the truth about it. Only when we understand what it is can we respond appropriately. We must be able to see the truth and accept it, good or bad. Bertrand Russell said one reason Hitler lost World War II was that he did not fully understand the situation. Bearers of bad news were punished. Soon, no one dared to tell him the truth. Not knowing the truth, he could not act appropriately. We can be glad this occurred. The shoot the messenger mentality has doomed any number of military leaders, business leaders, coaches, parents. It's been widely reported that Saddam Hussein practices this, with much the same result as Hitler's. Literally shooting bearers of bad news is horrific enough, but the crime of shooting ourselves rather than rationally dealing with accurate information is arguably worse. We do not like to admit to ourselves our errors, mistakes, or shortcomings, nor do we like to admit we have been in the wrong. We do not like to acknowledge that a situation is other than we would like it to be, so we kid ourselves, and because we will not see the truth, we cannot act appropriately. Someone has said that it is a good exercise to daily admit one painful fact about ourselves to ourselves. The success-type personality not only does not cheat and lie to other people, he learns to be honest with himself. What we call sincerity is itself based on self-understanding and self-honesty. For you cannot be sincere when you lie to yourself by rationalizing or telling yourself rational lies. You can do this if you accept yet another fundamental premise of psycho-cybernetics, to safeguard and strengthen your self-image. You are not your mistakes. Your tortured backswing and wicked slice does not make you a disgrace to the game of golf, let alone a bad, inept, or unsuccessful person. It is only a mechanical and mental mistake that can be corrected. A top corporate CEO once told me, "I've become somewhat famous thanks to several very notable, astute decisions, but I've made a number of incredibly bad ones, too. I'm neither my best or my worst decision. I am a successful, capable executive who makes his fair share of blunders, and that's all there is to it." When you thoroughly accept that you are not your mistakes, you are freed to acknowledge them, learn from them, set them aside, and move on from them without being mired in them. Here's a prescription to help you along. Look for and seek out true information concerning yourself, your problems, other people, or the situation, whether it is good news or bad news. Adopt the motto, "It doesn't matter who's right, but what's right." An automatic guidance system corrects its course from negative feedback data. It acknowledges errors in order to correct them and stay on course. So must you. Admit your mistakes and errors, but don't cry over them. Correct them and go forward. In dealing with other people, try to see the situation from their point of view as well as your own. The third letter of success is C, courage. Having a goal and understanding the situation are not enough. You must have the courage to act, for only by actions can goals, desires, and beliefs be translated into realities. Admiral William F. Halsey's personal motto was a quotation from Nelson: "No captain can do very wrong if he places his ship alongside that of an enemy." The best defense is a strong offense, is a military principle, said Halsey, but its application is wider than war. All problems, personal, national, or combat, become smaller if you don't dodge them, but confront them. Unquote. How can you live more courageously? That's a question ably answered by Psycho-Cybernetics. When you systematically strengthen your self-image and understand that you are not your mistakes, you find it infinitely easier to take risks without undue worry over what others will think or temporarily appearing foolish if you stumble. How can you be more assertive and forceful in advocating your ideas in the workplace? How can you more clearly and assertively ask for the order at the conclusion of a sales presentation? How can you take to the dance floor, even if you've too long believed you have 2 left feet? How can you embark on an entirely new career or avocation late in life, when axiomatically it's tough for an old dog to learn new tricks? How do you bounce back from severe adversity? These are all examples of living courageously, and they all require a bulletproof self-image that can stand up under pressure. Why not bet on yourself? Nothing in this world is ever absolutely certain or guaranteed. Often the difference between a successful person and a failure is not one's better abilities nor ideas, but the courage that one has to bet on ideas, to take a calculated risk, and to act. We often think of courage in terms of heroic deeds on the battlefield, in a shipwreck, or during a crisis. But everyday living requires courage too. Standing still, failing to act, causes people who are faced with a problem to become nervous, to feel stymied or trapped, and it can bring on a host of physical symptoms. I tell such people, study the situation thoroughly. Go over in your imagination the various courses of action possible to you, and the consequences that can and may follow from each course. Pick out the course that gives the most promise, and go ahead. If we wait until we are absolutely certain and sure before we act, we will never do anything. Any time you act, you can be wrong. Any decision you make can turn out to be the wrong one. But we must not let this deter us from going after the goal we want. You must daily have the courage to risk making mistakes, risk failure, risk being humiliated. A step in the wrong direction is better than staying on the spot all your life. Once you're moving forward, you can correct your course as you go. Your automatic guidance system cannot guide you when you're stalled, standing still. Lee Iacocca has said that decisiveness is the number one characteristic he looked for in key people to surround himself with and depend on. General Norman Schwarzkopf has said that leadership requires making decisions. Most leaders agree that success comes from decisiveness and course correction, not long delays and procrastination to attempt making only flawless choices. Few successes are achieved via a straight line, from point A to point B, from idea to fruition. Most successes are achieved in a zigzag manner. Here's a prescription to help you along. Be willing to make a few mistakes, to suffer a little pain to get what you want. Don't sell yourself short. Most people, said General R.E. Chambers, once chief of the Army's Psychiatry and Neurology Consultant Division, don't know how brave they really are. In fact, many potential heroes, both men and women, live out their lives in self-doubt. If they only knew they had these deep resources, it would help give them the self-reliance to meet most problems, even a big crisis." Unquote. You've got the resources, but you never know you've got them until you act and give them a chance to work for you. Another helpful suggestion is to practice acting boldly and with courage in regard to little things. Do not wait until you can be a big hero in some dire crisis. Daily living also requires courage. By practicing courage in little things, we develop the power and talent to act courageously in more important matters. Only little men are never wrong. Another help in overcoming uncertainty is to realize the role that self-esteem and the protection of self-esteem play in indecisiveness. Many people are indecisive because they fear loss of self-esteem if they are proved wrong. Use self-esteem for yourself instead of against yourself by convincing yourself of this truth. Big men and big personalities make mistakes and admit them. It is the little man who is afraid to admit he has been wrong. This, of course, applies equally to women. Success through the process of elimination. I've enjoyed reading Arthur Conan Doyle's tales of the great detective Sherlock Holmes's exploits. Holmes's trusty helpmate, Dr. Watson, a man of many fine qualities but woefully little imagination, is frequently befuddled and amazed as Holmes disappears into his own imagination and emerges with the solution to the most mystifying of crimes. In his imagination, Holmes engages in the pedantic, dogged process of elimination, ultimately arriving at the one best conclusion he cannot eliminate. Then that becomes his target, engaging all of the powers of his automatic success mechanism in uncovering the clues, facts, and evidence that prove it true. That is, he arrives at the target. A lesser detective would, instead, remain mired in the massive difficulty of the task and the confusing, even conflicting testimonies, thus engaging his automatic failure mechanism instead of his automatic success mechanism. It is also worth noting that Holmes is willing to be wrong, and when his first attempts at and proclamations of deduction prove far off course, he does not collapse in embarrassment or humiliation or give control over to frustration and aggression, nor does he retreat into isolation. He virtually shrugs off his mistakes and quickly refocuses, zigging and zagging his way toward his ultimate objective. Thomas Edison's wife once observed that Mr. Edison worked endlessly on a problem using the method of elimination. If a person asked him whether he were discouraged because so many attempts proved unavailing, he would say, "No, I'm not discouraged, because every wrong attempt discarded is another step forward." If outcomes were preordained and certain, no one would play a game, nor would thousands of spectators tune into television to watch it contested. We must learn to embrace the short-term uncertainties of the game. while staying connected to the targets we choose and trusting that we will achieve our overriding objectives, albeit by zigging and zagging rather than a straight line. Reassure yourself that you are not your mistakes, so that you can freely acknowledge them, extract whatever useful feedback can be found in them, correct course, and continue moving forward. The sixth letter of failure is R, resentment. When the automatic failure mechanism looks for a scapegoat or excuse for failure, it often serves up society, the system, life, the brakes, luck, the boss, the spouse, even the customer. People in the firm grip of their automatic failure mechanisms resent the success and happiness of others because they are proof that life is shortchanging them and they are being treated unfairly. Resentment is an attempt to make our own failure palatable by explaining it in terms of unfair treatment, injustice. But as a salve for failure, resentment is a cure that is worse than the disease. It is a deadly poison to the spirit, makes happiness impossible, and uses up tremendous energy that could go into accomplishment. Quite often, when people came to me in my practice requesting surgical correction of insignificant imperfections on their faces magnified by their imaginations, conversations with them led to a realization. They disliked what they saw when they looked in the mirror, not due to the reality of the reflection, but the resentment harbored for just about everyone in their life and their life circumstances. Resentment is a way that fails. Resentment is also a way of making us feel important. Many people get a perverse satisfaction from feeling wronged. The victim of injustice, the one who has been unfairly treated, is morally superior to those who cause the injustice. Resentment is also a way, or an attempt, to wipe out or eradicate a real or fancied wrong or injustice that has already happened. The resentful person is trying to prove a case before the court of life, so to speak. If he can feel resentful enough, and thereby prove the injustice, some magic process will reward him by making the event or circumstance that caused the resentment not so. In this sense, resentment is a mental resistance to, a non-acceptance of, something that has already happened. The word itself comes from two Latin words, re, meaning back, and sentire, meaning to feel. Resentment is an emotional rehashing or refighting of some event in the past. You cannot win, because you are attempting to do the impossible. Change the past. Stuttering as a demonstration of inhibition. Stuttering offers a good illustration of how excessive negative feedback brings on inhibition and interferes with appropriate response. While most of us are not consciously aware of the fact, when we talk, we receive negative feedback data through our ears by listening to or monitoring our own voice. This is the reason that totally deaf individuals seldom speak well. They have no way of knowing whether their voice is coming out as a shriek, a scream, or an unintelligible mumble. This is also the reason that persons born deaf do not learn to talk at all, except with special tutoring. If you sing, perhaps you have been surprised to find that you could not sing on key or in harmony with others, while suffering temporary deafness or partial deafness because of a cold. Thus, negative feedback itself is no bar or handicap to speech. On the contrary, it enables us to speak and speak correctly. Voice teachers advise that we record our own voices on a tape recorder and listen to them as a method of improving tone, enunciation, etc. By doing this, we become aware of errors in speech that we had not noticed before. We are able to see clearly what we are doing wrong, and we can make correction. However, if negative feedback is to be effective in helping us talk better, it should 1. Be more or less automatic or subconscious. 2. It should occur spontaneously, or while we're talking. And 3. Response to feedback should not be so sensitive as to result in inhibition. If we are consciously overcritical of our speech, or if we are too careful in trying to avoid errors in advance rather than reacting spontaneously, stuttering is likely to result. If the stutterer's excessive feedback can be toned down, or if it can be made spontaneous rather than anticipatory, improvement in speech will be immediate. Videotape has provided an extraordinarily valuable feedback tool for people seeking to improve their communication effectiveness. Chiropractors and dentists role-play their case presentations to patients on video, with consultants acting as the skeptical patients, then study the video replay. Sales professionals do the same. Speakers, seminar leaders, politicians, and their speech coaches make similar use of it. Golfers' swings can be better analyzed and the golfers better coached by videotaping the swing. Football players study film. This is extremely valuable only to the person with a sufficiently healthy self-image not to obsess over every mistake and flaw observed, and able to focus on course correction through observation. What many people and coaches do not fully understand about such feedback, about capturing performance on tape for careful observation and analysis, is that it is equally important and often more useful to identify, focus on, and imprint the positives rather than the negatives. Care must be taken not to overly emphasize a flaw in performance to such a degree that it becomes mistakenly received by the servo mechanism as the target. You might think of this in the context of the old mind trick. Tell people to close their eyes for 60 seconds and think of anything but a dancing pink elephant in red boxer shorts on roller skates. Invariably, what mental picture dominates? Be careful you do not manufacture pink elephants for yourself, or permit coaches to do it for you. Conscious self-criticism makes you do worse. This has been proved by Dr. E. Colin Cherry of London, England. Writing in the British scientific journal Nature, Dr. Cherry stated his belief that stuttering was caused by excessive monitoring. To test his theory, he equipped 25 severe stutterers with earphones through which a loud tone drowned out the sound of their own voices. When asked to read aloud from a prepared text under these conditions, which eliminated self-criticism, the improvement was remarkable. Another group of severe stutterers was trained in shadow talk, to follow as closely as possible and attempt to talk with a person reading from a text or a voice on radio or TV. After brief practice, the stutterers learned to shadow talk easily, and most of them were able to speak normally and correctly under these conditions, which obviated advanced criticism and literally forced them to speak spontaneously, or to synchronize speaking and correcting. Additional practice in shadow talk enabled the stutterers to learn how to speak correctly at all times, proving to the self-image that the previously believed truth, I am a stutterer, was incorrect. When excessive negative feedback or self-criticism was eliminated, inhibition disappeared and performance improved. When there was no time for worry or too much carefulness in advance, expression immediately improved. This gives us a valuable clue as to how we may disinhibit or release a locked-up personality and improve performance in other areas. How the Dale Carnegie Program, Toastmasters International and Network Marketing, or MLM companies, provide just the right balance of course correction feedback. Countless business leaders have graduated from the Dale Carnegie Program, notably Lee Iacocca, who in turn has encouraged thousands to enroll. Many top professional speakers, as well as countless sales professionals, executives, pastors, and community leaders, have gone from awkward, nervous, inhibited, stumbling speakers to confident and persuasive speakers through participation in Toastmasters. It is almost the norm in the world of network marketing for the inhibited person who believes and insists that she can't sell and can't speak in front of a group to flower and bloom and metamorphose into a dynamic, convincing salesperson, and to become such a ham on stage it's hard to pry the microphone from her fingers. Why and how does this happen with such consistency and frequency in these environments? The individual's experiences in these environments provide what you might call gentle course correction feedback, so that the individuals have a safe, encouraging opportunity to test and challenge their limiting beliefs, to let their suppressed personality come out into the light little by little, to discover their true self, ultimately showing proof of greater abilities to their self-image, thus moving that little dotted line of self-imposed limits and giving themselves more room for creative self-expression. In these environments, individuals are more cajoled than forced into self-expression. Then they are applauded and congratulated, often for each small step forward, each small victory. Course correction feedback is well balanced with recognition of positive aspects of performance. There's never a band of jackals leaping at persons when they err, screaming, "I told you so, you can't do this." To the contrary, even those who go on stage and stumble, forget their place, flush beet red, will get applause and encouragement. In this safe environment, they can risk improvement rather than choose isolation. More often than not, they quickly discover that their "I can't" beliefs are merely self-imposed limits, not actual limits. Such a discovery can have extraordinary results. A sales manager cons his own salesperson. A manager of a direct sales force told me of his conning one of his own salespeople into improved performance. And while I cannot condone the strategy, its result is fascinating and provocative. This particular salesperson was in a severe slump, going on appointment after appointment after appointment, and returning night after night empty-handed. Her self-image was rapidly shrinking to the size of a tiny spud, and the manager realized he needed to employ some powerful, fast-acting medicine or fire her. The next night, he engineered 2 appointments back-to-back that were rigged. He sent her to friends' homes. That afternoon, he rehearsed his friends and gave them the money to make their purchases, so the actual sales took place on which commissions would be paid. When she arrived at the first home and began rather timidly going through her presentation, she discovered unusually receptive and responsive prospects. Their positive feedback helped her warm to the task, and by the end of her presentation she was humming along. She closed the sale and left with a signed order and a $300 check in her attaché case. At the second appointment, everything went as if scripted, and her prospects were performing perfectly. Another $300 check. Over the next 4 nights, from 8 appointments, she chalked up 6 sales. By month's end, she had batted over 70% for the entire month, earned her biggest month's income ever, although a small bit of it came secretly from her sales manager's wallet, and even won a getaway weekend in the company's sales contest. As he said, a star was reborn. We must find opportunities and environments where we can operate without fear or inhibition to prove our competence to our self-images. Then we can trust our servo mechanism to deliver peak performance, even as we move into rougher seas. Stop fighting straw men. Still another type of inappropriate response that causes worry, insecurity, and tension is the bad habit of trying to respond emotionally to something that doesn't exist except in our imaginations. Not satisfied with over-responding to actual minor stimuli in the actual environment, many of us create straw men in our imaginations and emotionally respond to our own mental pictures. In addition to negatives that actually exist in the environment, we impose our own negatives. This or that may happen. What if such and such happens? When we worry, we form mental pictures, adverse mental pictures of what may exist in the environment, of what may happen. We then respond to these negative pictures as if they were present reality. Remember, your nervous system cannot tell the difference between a real experience and one that is vividly imagined. Doing nothing is the proper response to an unreal problem. Again, you can tranquilize yourself against this sort of disturbance, not by something you do, but by something you don't do. Your refusal to respond. As far as your emotions are concerned, the proper response to worry pictures is to totally ignore them. Live emotionally in the present moment. Analyze your environment. Become more aware of what actually exists in your environment, and respond and react spontaneously to that. To do this, you must give all your attention to what is happening now. You must keep your eye on the ball. Then your response will be appropriate, and you will have no time to notice or respond to a fictitious environment. Your first aid kit. Carry these thoughts with you as a sort of first aid kit. Inner disturbance, or the opposite of tranquility, is nearly always caused by over-response, a too sensitive alarm reaction. You create a built-in tranquilizer or psychic screen between yourself and the disturbing stimulus when you practice not responding, letting the telephone ring. You cure old habits of over-response. You extinguish old conditioned reflexes when you practice delaying the habitual automatic and unthinking response. Relaxation is nature's own tranquilizer. Relaxation is non-response. Learn physical relaxation by daily practice. Then, when you need to practice non-response in daily activities, just do what you're doing when you relax. Use the quiet room in your mind, both as a daily tranquilizer to tone down nervous response and as a way to clear your emotional mechanism of carryover emotions that would be inappropriate in a new situation. Stop scaring yourself to death with your own mental pictures. Stop fighting straw men. Emotionally, respond only to what is, here and now, and ignore the rest. Try this mental training exercise. Create in your imagination a vivid mental picture of yourself sitting quietly, composed, unmoved, letting your telephone ring, as outlined earlier in this chapter. Then, in your daily activities, carry over the same peaceful, composed, unmoved attitude by remembering this mental picture. Say to yourself, I am letting the telephone ring, whenever you are tempted to obey or respond to a fear bell or anxiety bell. Next, use your imagination to practice non-response in various sorts of situations. See yourself sitting quietly and unmoved while an associate rants and raves. See yourself going through your daily tasks one by one, calmly, composed, unhurried, in spite of the pressures of a busy day. See yourself maintaining the same constant, stable course, in spite of the various hurry bells and pressure bells in your environment. See yourself in various situations that have in the past upset you, only now you remain settled, poised, by not responding. Don't take counsel of your fears. General George Patton, the hell-for-leather old blood-and-guts general of World War II fame, was once asked if he ever experienced fear before a battle. Yes, he said, he often experienced fear just before an important engagement, and sometimes during a battle. But he added, I never take counsel of my fears. If you experience negative failure feelings, fear and anxiety before an important undertaking, as everyone does from time to time, it should not be taken as a sure sign that you will fail. It all depends on how you react to them and what attitude you take toward them. If you listen to them, obey them, and take counsel of them, you will probably perform badly, but this need not be true. First of all, it is important to understand that failure feelings, fear, anxiety, lack of self-confidence, do not spring from a heavenly oracle. They are not written in the stars. They are not holy gospel. Nor are they intimations of a set and decided fate that means that failure is decreed and decided. They originate from your own mind. They are indicative only of attitudes of mind within you, not of external facts that are rigged against you. They mean only that you are underestimating your own abilities, overestimating and exaggerating the nature of the difficulty before you, and that you are reactivating memories of past failures rather than memories of past successes. That is all that they mean, and all that they signify. They do not pertain to or represent the truth concerning future events, but only your own mental attitude about the future event. Knowing this, you are free to accept or reject these negative failure feelings, to obey them and take counsel of them, or to ignore their advice and go ahead. Moreover, you are in a position to use them for your own benefit. Accept negative feelings as a challenge. If we react to negative feelings aggressively and positively, they become challenges that automatically arouse more power and more ability within us. The ideas of difficulty, threat, and menace arouse additional strength within us if we react to them aggressively rather than passively. In the last chapter, we saw that a certain amount of excitement, if interpreted correctly and employed correctly, helps rather than hinders performance. It all depends on the individual and his or her attitudes, whether negative feelings are used as assets or liabilities. React aggressively to your own negative advice. Everyone has known individuals who can be discouraged and defeated by the advice from others that you can't do it. On the other hand, there are people who rise to the occasion and become more determined than ever to succeed when given the same advice. An associate of industrialist Henry J. Kaiser's said, "If you don't want Henry to do a thing, you had better not make the mistake of telling him it can't be done or that he can't do it, for he will then do it or bust." It is not only possible, but entirely practicable, to react in the same aggressive, positive manner to the negative advice of our own feelings, as we can and should, when the negative advice comes from others. Overcome evil with good. Feelings cannot be directly controlled by willpower. They cannot be voluntarily made to order or turned on and off like a faucet. If they cannot be commanded, however, they can be wooed. If they cannot be controlled by a direct act of will, they can be controlled indirectly. A bad feeling is not dispelled by conscious effort or willpower. It can be dispelled, however, by another feeling. If we cannot drive out a negative feeling by making a frontal assault on it, we can accomplish the same result by substituting a positive feeling. Remember that feeling follows imagery. Feeling coincides with, and is appropriate to, what our nervous system accepts as real or the truth about environment. Whenever we find ourselves experiencing undesirable feelings, we should not concentrate on the undesirable feeling, even to the extent of driving it out. Instead, we should immediately concentrate on positive imagery, on filling the mind with wholesome, positive, desirable images, imaginations, and memories. If we do this, the negative feelings take care of themselves. They simply evaporate. We develop new feeling tones appropriate to the new imagery. If, on the other hand, we concentrate only on driving out or attacking worry thoughts, we necessarily must concentrate on negatives. And even if we are successful in driving out one worry thought, a new one or even several new ones are likely to rush in, since the general mental atmosphere is still negative. Jesus warned us about sweeping the mind clean of one demon only to have 7 new ones move in if we left the house empty. He also advised us not to resist evil, but to overcome evil with good. The substitution method of curing worry. Dr. Matthew Chappell, a modern psychologist, recommends exactly the same thing in his book, How to Control Worry. We are worriers because we practice worrying until we become adept at it, says Dr. Chappell. We habitually indulge in negative imagery out of the past and in anticipating the future. This worry creates tension. The worrier then makes an effort to stop worrying and is caught in a vicious cycle. Effort increases tension. Tension provides a worrying atmosphere. The only cure for worry, he says, is to make a habit out of immediately substituting pleasant, wholesome mental images for unpleasant worry images. Each time you find yourself worrying, use this as a signal to immediately fill the mind with pleasant mental pictures out of the past or in anticipating pleasant future experiences. In time, worry will defeat itself because it becomes a stimulus for practicing anti-worrying. The worrier's job, says Dr. Chappell, is not to overcome some particular source of worry, but to change mental habits. As long as the mind is set or geared in a passive, defeatist, I hope nothing happens sort of attitude, there will always be something to worry about. When I was a medical student, I remember being called on by the professor to orally answer questions on the subject of pathology. Somehow, I was filled with fear and anxiety when I stood up to face the other students, and I couldn't answer the questions properly. Yet on other occasions, when I looked into the microscope at a slide and answered the typewritten questions before me, I was a different person. I was relaxed, confident, and sure of myself because I knew my subject. I had that winning feeling and did very well. As the semester progressed, I took stock of myself, and when I stood up to answer questions, I pretended I didn't see an audience, but was looking through a microscope. I was relaxed, and substituted that winning feeling for the negative feeling when quizzed orally. At the end of the semester, I did very well in both oral and written examinations. The negative feeling had finally become a sort of bell that created a conditioned reflex to arouse that winning feeling. Today, I lecture and speak with ease at any gathering in any part of the world because I am relaxed and know what I'm talking about when I do speak. More than that, I bring others into the conversation and make them feel relaxed too.